You hear me loud enough?
Yep, and I have the recording started.
All right, fantastic. Well, first, welcome. I hope you enjoyed your dinner tonight, because this is our banquet. Now, I've got to say, I've been buying and selling glassware since I was 12. And so 42 years now, I've been in this business. I've given literally dozens of talks before, but this is a first, being a live virtual discussion on Dolphin Candlesticks. I collect tall Dolphin Candlesticks. You know, there are little ones. Fenton made them, Imperial made them, Westmoreland made small ones. I've always liked ones that were 7 inches or tall. That's why Cal said. I've always lived by the motto that I buy junk and I sell antiques. And, one person's treasure could be another person's complete junk. So, give you a little bit of of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about the different periods of American and some foreign tall Dolphin candlesticks, which started around 1830 and went pretty much to the present day. I'll be removing ones from behind me, putting them here. We'll discuss those. I'll put them back. And the biggest thing is, please ask questions. You have a question, type it in the chat. Dan will be telling me the question, and I'll answer it right there. And don't be afraid, ask questions. So we're going to start with Dolphin candlesticks. And one of the biggest things that I get from people who are not into antiques, or they're like, it doesn't look like a dolphin to me. They're like, it certainly doesn't look like Flipper. And the reason is, first off, Dolphin candlesticks started in the 1700s in France. Probably Baccarat was the first one to make them. And they still make them to this day. Of course, I can't afford those. They're just way too expensive. They're modeled after a dolphin fish, not the Flipper dolphin. So dolphin fish. If you go to Google and look up dolphin fish, you'll see they do look very similar to this, but these are a stylized Asian kind of version of a dolphin. How the United States got them was Boston and Sandwich in the 1830s copied them. Glass companies, as you know, from hundreds of years ago to present day, they copied each other. You go to Mossert today and you'll see a bunch of pieces that were made back in the 30s, 40s, 50s by different companies, including Fenton, including all the other different companies, because they reuse molds. Boston Sandwich basically did the same thing. They liked the design, they brought it here to the United States, they had molds made, and they started making. This dolphin here is one of my oldest. I just recently received it. This is a Boston Sandwich from the 1830s. It is a 2-color, clam broth on the bottom and blue, an opaque blue on the top. Boston Sandwich made different styles of bases. If you see this one, it is a 6-sided base. They also made a regular square base. And then they made the double stack base. These two on either side are also Boston Sandwich in clear. Now, Boston Sandwich is a number of different colors. There's deep greens, there's light blues, there's sapphire blue, there's an opaque green, there's a translucent green, of course, Vaseline, clear, these opaques, plus other colors. They were popular. They made a lot of them. They sold quite a few. And Boston Sandwich was making dolphins from the 1830s to, well, probably late 50s and they still made Dolphin items, but not candlesticks, all the way to the very end in 1888 when they closed. From 40 and 50, they were hugely popular. Everybody bought them. Everybody had them. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but it's because of these Dolphin candlesticks that we really have glass collecting today. And I will explain that in a couple of minutes. But not only did Boston Sandwich make them in the 1800s, but there were other companies making them. This one is a double step in a clam broth. And this was made by New England Glass Company. And New England Glass Company is actually still in existence today. It's Libby Glass. They purchased New England Glass, moved it to Toledo, and still in operation across the world. And as Dan just said, it's where Deming Jarvis started. And he started Boston Sandwich. And this one is a Midwest Dolphin, Pittsburgh area. Not sure who made it. Probably McKee. Could be probably McKee. If you notice, round base, a little bit different. And one unusual thing about this Dolphin is, I don't know if you can see it, but in the tail here, there's actually a heart, which I think is really neat. Let me move some of these over. And if I turn my back on you, please don't be offended. Just the best way we could do it here in my living room. Here is a unusual double-step Dolphin made out of iron. I have no idea. It does have a lot of age to it. I'm not really sure when it was made, but I'm thinking in the 1800s. Because, of course, items in Boston Sandwich and other glass companies, they were copied too. So ironworks would copy. There was wood carvers that were carving them. There was pottery, porcelain makers that have actually made Dolphins. So let me move these out of the way a little bit. Here's one. We're going to talk more about this later. You look at this. It's a double step. It's in a gorgeous green that was, Boston Sandwich made this green. It actually has uranium in it. It glows. Looks fantastic. We'll talk about wafers in a minute, but it has a wafer here that holds it together. I bought this on eBay 20 years ago and thought, oh my God, I got that wonderful. It was my first Boston Sandwich Dolphin Candlestick. And then as I did more research and more research and more research, I found out this was made in Germany in the 1920s as a reproduction so that antique dealers could sell them as original Boston Sandwich. It's flint. It's got a wafer holding it together, which we'll discuss in a second. But the big way to tell the difference is this is an original. And if you look at the two Dolphins, the double step has a smaller Dolphin than the single. This has the big Dolphin head. That's a reproduction. They copied the wrong base to this Dolphin when the German company Reich is the company made it. So they're out there. They're still almost 100 years old, and they're highly collected, but it's good to know which is which. Because this is a $50 Dolphin, where this Dolphin in an original Boston Sandwich would be $500.
Question?
Yes.
How did Boston and Sandwich get two colors of glass in the same mold at the same time?
Excellent, excellent question. Here's an example, two colors. The reason is this was the early days of pressed glass. And it was actually two molds. One mold for the top part, the cup. One mold for the Dolphin in the base.
The same cup was used for every
So the same cup was used for lots of different candlesticks, not just dolphins. So they would pour them. They would be hot. They would be separate. They'd put a little dab of glass in between here. They call it a wafer. And then they'd squish them together, and they'd go to the lid. So it's not really a wafer. It's just a dab of glass that holds them together. And then when they push it down, it actually molds and becomes one piece. So that should answer your question.
Also, how do you distinguish which company made them?
You can't hear her question.
Different characteristics. How do you distinguish which company made them? There's a lot of issues with that. Shape and form. To be very honest, I say this is a Boston sandwich. This could be New England glass. This could be other South Boston companies that made it because they were all copying each other. Now, some of them, like this one here, if you notice, this is definitely a Boston sandwich. It has a candle cup that actually has 6 dolphins all the way around. They were the only ones that made the dolphin candle cup. Later on, Imperial Glass actually copied this in the 1970s, which we'll be talking about. So I'm going to be leaving it over here.
Didn't Mount Washington make one?
Mount Washington made very similar. Like I said, this is believed to be New England glass in this clam broth. The small one, this is actually Flint in milk glass. This is an original Boston sandwich. They were the only ones that made this style at this time. Now later, maybe in the 1850s, 60s, there were some companies in the Pittsburgh area that were copying. But the Sandwich Glass Museum actually reproduces these in different colors, and they mark them, say SGS or SGM on the bottom, so you know. This one, another one was on eBay. The people didn't know. They thought it was made by the Sandwich Glass Museum. They sold it at that price. I think it was $12. And it's actually an original with the rings Boston sandwich. So Boston sandwich, and they ended in 1888. There was kind of a, dolphins were popular in the 1870s, 80s, 90s. Northwood decided in about 1902 to make a dolphin candlestick, much smaller, and it's called the petticoat. They made it in 3 colors, clear opalescent, blue opalescent, and Vaseline opalescent. Those are the only 3 colors that Northwood made. Sometime around that, a European, this is European, and I think it's German, they were making one very similar. So I'm not sure who was copying who, but you do find this in blue opalescent, and rarely you find it in Vaseline opalescent. And then later on, about 30 years, not very long, but about 30 years, Heisey decided to reproduce some dolphins. And I'll explain why in a second, but that's what they made. And they made it in flamingo, moonbeam, clear. So very similar to the Northwood. They were copying the Northwood, but they were selling these as reproductions of Boston sandwich. They were only 30 years old, not 100 at the time, and they were only copying the Northwood pattern, but they didn't know that. So in the 1920s, and why I say in the 1920s, it's because of Boston sandwich. People started to collect glass. They had a disposable income. In the teens, they started collecting primitive furnitures, and they wanted the glass too to match in these homes. And it became, if you're familiar with Wallace Nutting and the prints and the books that he wrote on antiques, It really, there was a craze. Some of the first books on collecting glassware were actually written in the 1920s. So Heisey and a number of other companies, and we'll talk about that, they wanted to make Dolphin Candlesticks because they were very popular. Now you have these companies coming from Germany that were making them. Heisey started making them. Fenton started making the small dolphins on different vases and candy dishes. Westmoreland started making, which we'll talk about. Cambridge started making them. But Heisey actually found one of the original salesmen that was with the company of Boston Sandwich when they closed in the 1880s. He had mahogany molds that they had used to design, not actually to make, but to design the different dolphins.
For the mold makers to make the molds.
So he, Heisey, purchased these from the salesman and had his company make molds to make Heisey dolphins. Now, Heisey never marked his dolphins because they are not original to Heisey. If you notice, the base is a little bit bigger, but it's basically a single-step dolphin. And here, this one, of course, is Flamingo, Moongleam. They made Sahara. They made Cobalt. They made Zircon, which are probably the most expensive dolphins you can buy out there. And they also made Amber. This is probably the rarest pair of dolphins I have. The Amber Heisey ones are extremely rare. There's about 50 pairs known to have been made. That's it. There's 137 pairs of Zircon that were made. About 8 years ago, I saw a pair of these sell for $6,000 for the pair. I certainly didn't pay that for this, but I did pay quite a bit. So, you know, people in the 20s, they wanted to collect what they thought was all Boston Sandwich. And the glass companies started making all these different pieces that were reproductions to attract the buyers. Like I said, these are the Heisey ones. And we will talk about some of the other ones made. This is a 1049 up by Westmoreland. Which, if you remember, you saw the other one over there that's Boston Sandwich. It has a six-sided base. The book by West on Westmoreland says these were an original design. They're not. They copied Boston Sandwich just like everybody else. They made them in green in the 20s. They made them in ambers. They made this beer bottle brown, in blue and pink. And they were very, very popular. Westmoreland sold tons of them. And they continued selling these until 1984 when they closed in all different colors. And we'll touch on that a little bit as we go along.
Can we share this while you're...
What's that?
Can we share this while you're...
Yeah. So, of course, this style was getting really popular. So the German company Reich, they started making them. And this was made in the 20s to compete with the Westmoreland ones. And they actually have a wafer, and they did a two-color. And Reich was really trying to make these things so that dealers could sell them as antiques. It kind of quite unscrupulous, but it was happening in the 20s, just like it happens today. Tiffin got in the picture, and, well, let's say, U.S. Glass got in the picture. Sold under the name Tiffin, because these were not produced in Tiffin. At the time, only blownwares were produced in Tiffin, Ohio. These were another U.S. Glass factory in Pittsburgh, They made a jade, which is kind of hard to find. They made blue. They made a pink. Oh, and the jade, of course, has uranium in it, so it will glow. They made a green, which glows too. A lot. So it was really popular. You know, a lot of companies were making them, and they different sizes, different shapes. Every company had a different style. Some were trying to be exactly like Boston Sandwich or the early period ones, and some like this just for making it, you know, totally different and making it their own. The next big company, we'll get these out of the way. And again, like I said, please forgive my back. All right, we're going to switch it over to the other table. The next big company in the 20s that started producing dolphins was Cambridge Glass. And they made a number of different styles. Now here's their regular amber. The first one Cambridge came out with was this style here. It's called the Stratford. Very popular, done in many, many colors. Cambridge had a company that they had in England, Cambridge Glass, of course. They never really, they didn't talk about in their ads that they were from, you know, made in the United States, but it was just Cambridge Glass in England and in the UK. And they made dolphins, but they made a different type of base, just a flat, round base. And then a few years later into the 30s, now this is, you know, early 20s to the end of the 20s, they made a square base. And they continued the square base until they closed. Any questions? Now remember, feel free to ask questions.
Which one are the blues? Actually, you do have one. Which one are the blues? What color is zircon in glass?
Zircon is like an aquamarine color. And no, the last set of zircon dolphins in Heisey sold for $11,000 a few years ago. Very rarely do they sell. When they do sell, it's between high-end collectors. They never come to auction. The amber ones very rarely do either. I lucked out and got them. Sahara are very rare, and they would go in the probably $8,000 for the pair. In the cobalt, I don't have those. Sell for. I had a dealer offer a pair to me recently for $5,000, and as you see, they're not here. Cambridge made 3 different blues. This is Bluebell. This is cobalt #1, which has, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a little uranium in it. There's a cobalt #2 that has no uranium in it. Cambridge did another thing that was kind of interesting. They would take one color and make it into 2. This is amber. This is cinnamon. And what's the difference is that it is acid etched. Another example of that is very, very popular color, light emerald green. To have in your house. I've been collecting it for years. I'm actually, until COVID, I was trying to write a book on uranium glass, which after COVID, we will be getting back to that.
Did you point out that has a different base on it?
Yes. So that was a custard. Of course, this is, like I said, there's only 4 of these in the topaz that they made. Cambridge also did some flash colors. This is clear. with a flash that they called Golden Showers. Westmoreland copied them and did the same exact thing. And these are all from the 20s. You'll also find them completely the yellow. Cambridge made, of course, they're pink.
You're supposed to repeat the questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry if I didn't repeat the questions. I will from now on. Were there just the 2 questions?
3.
Sorry, one.
I couldn't get the message to send. Would you please tell about the wafer that you were mentioning earlier?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's well. Let me grab the right Dolphin to do that for. All right. So it's 2 separate molds. A mold for the cup on the top and the mold for the base. They make the 2 pieces of glass. They're still hot. They put a little dab of glass in between here, between the 2 colors. It's the best way to explain it. And then they put the 2 pieces of glass together. So as it cools, it becomes 1 piece. It's all glass. There's nothing else. And the wafer's not like it's a molded little wafer. It's just a little dab of glass that the worker put on this piece and then stuck the 2 together with.
Some of them had a cup that hid the wafer when it got squeezed.
Yes, yeah. Some of them did have a cup that hid the wafer, but early, and we're talking a lot of glass was done this way, even into the 1880s. You'll see compotes that have a different top and bottom and they're put together. Candlesticks were done that way. Compotes were done that way. I guess that's the only 2 basic items that were done that way. But so
Lions were insanely complicated.
What?
Lions were insanely complicated. They
So
actually had to form.
Zach, I'll mention that the black-footed Northwood stretch glass bowls were also, the black foot was applied to the bowl also using.
Okay. See, and look at that. That's, into the 19-teens, 20s, and they were still doing that. Another unusual Cambridge one, not really unusual. These were common. These were made. They had a lot of trouble with them. This is Rubina. And I don't know if you can tell by the light here. You start off with reds and golds and move into blues and greens. And this is a struck color. So when it came out of the mold, it was 1 color. It was put back into the glory hole and heated up on both ends. And because of it reheating, it would actually change the colors of the glass. Rubina is not easy to make. Summit Art Glass actually did try, and they made a few items. So if you find Rubina, whether it's Cambridge's Rubina or it's even Summit's Rubina, it's rare and people love it. The more blue that you see in a Rubina piece, the higher its value. The less blue, the lower the value.
Kyle had a comment.
Yes.
Yeah,
We have a comment. Hold on.
From Kyle. They made lamps with wafers and also used
Oh, yes.
wafers in the flower stands. You want to repeat that?
Cal made a comment on there about using wafers in lamps too,
And flower stands.
and flower stands. So, and you can check that out on the comments. But so Cambridge, 1928, I believe they made these for 1 year. If you ever see these out, they are spectacular and they are very expensive. You're talking probably $700 a piece for the Rubina. Now, as I said, Cambridge changed their molds and started making in the 30s and 40s. They started making the square base dolphins. And they made a number of colors. They're cobalt, they're carmine red, crown Tuscan, almost lost that. They did make milk glass. Last 6 months they were open. But we'll talk about that in a second because I have two other ones.
Move the crown Tuscan back. It's just looking washed out. Move it back out of the light. Out of the light.
Okay. The crown Tuscans, you know, is a peachy color. It might not be coming through with these lights here. There is supposedly emerald green ones, the dark emerald green, too. Never seen a pair. So I don't really know if they did make them or not. They're cataloged, but no one's actually ever seen them. So these are very popular, especially this size. Cambridge made quite a few of them, and the collectors love them now. As you know, Cambridge closed in the 1950s, and they reopened for a short time. I believe it was in 1958. And they, excuse me one second. For 6 months, they made milk glass in 58. This is the Dolphin Candlestick, square base, but if you notice, the top is different. This smaller, this one's larger, more ruffled. So Cambridge redid the mold. Cambridge closed in 58, and these molds for this sold to Imperial. Imperial held the molds until 1984, and they never reproduced them. They never made them. In 84, when Imperial closed, Summit Art Glass bought the molds. And Summit Art Glass made them in Vaseline, and if you look, that top is the same. In Vaseline, they made it in cobalt blue, and they made them in rubino. They only were able to make 50 or 60 pairs of rubino because they kept breaking. And they also tested out pink. They made one pair in pink. These came from Mrs. Vocalsong. She donated them to a charity. They were the only pair made in pink. When Mr. Vocalsong passed away, Mrs. Vocalsong sold the mold to the Cambridge Club, and the Cambridge Club owns the mold now. I keep bugging them and saying you should be making, you know, dolphins. Get Moster to make them in some color and put the name on it. They haven't taken my advice yet, but I'm gonna still bug them. But any Vaseline dolphins, because they're so traditional to the original, you know, people love them in that color. So we're gonna go back a little bit in time. Back to the 20s, although I don't have one. If you're familiar with consolidated glass, Rubin, who designed Ruba Romnick, also designed a Dolphin Candlestick, and it looked just like this. This is not a consolidated. Well, no, sorry, technically. This is a consolidated. This isn't the 1920s consolidated. The 1920s ones were clear, and they had a wash on them, a colored wash. I have yet to be able to purchase one. The consolidated Phoenix collectors covet them. If you can ever find one, they go for well over $1,000 for a single candlestick. So that's why I don't have them, to be very honest.
It's a comment.
Yeah.
Imperial didn't just acquire Cambridge molds. They bought all Cambridge assets, including trademarks, name, and mold.
There was a comment that they just didn't get the mold. Imperial just didn't get the Cambridge mold, but they bought Cambridge names, trademarks, and all that. They never made those Dolphin Candlesticks, though. And I'll explain why in a minute because it's going to come up. But this one is a 1940s consolidated that was made from the original consolidated molds from the 20s, but they made them in the 40s, and they made them for Reuben Haley's son, who wanted to market these Dolphin candlesticks that his dad designed. This is actually a 1940s one. Round bottom, no stippling, no IG. And you'll see, I don't know if I have another white one out here, but you'll see more of these that I talk about that are Imperial. Imperial then, in the late 40s, early 50s, copied this and decided to make candlesticks. And they made them in every color imaginable. Here's a 1970s green. Here's a milk glass one with out of ground bottom. There's the nut brown. And they did do, in the 70s, they did do some iridescent, which iridescent dolphins are very hard to find. Supposedly they made, this is blue ice, they supposedly made pink ice too. I've not been able to find the pink ice. Then for LeVay, they made a marigold. And there's a limited amount. I think there was 250 of these made, so 125 pairs. They're signed on the bottom. They're engraved on the bottom what number they are. So this is Imperial's design. That was a copy of Reuben Haley's consolidated design. And then in the 2000s, I found one of these. And if you notice, they're the same thing, but a lot bigger. These were made in Ireland. Somebody had taken this design and made another mold and was making them in Ireland of lead crystal. I don't know how long they were made. I know they were made in the 2000s, but just kind of something unusual. Nice quality, heavy, really well done. So we have these Imperials here. And they were making, and that's probably why they didn't make this style, because they had those on the market. Made every color you can imagine. Let me get some of these out of the way.
You gonna take any?
No, I'll just put them down here. Excuse me a second. The Metropolitan, speaking of Imperial, the Metropolitan Museum of Art commissioned Imperial to make reproductions of sandwich dolphins.
That's the New York?
Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York. So here's an original Boston sandwich with the cup that has the actual dolphins on it. Here's the Imperial 1970s version. You notice it's much bigger, but the cup very much the same. They also made single step base in Vaseline. They did, for one Christmas, they did a reproduction with the original gold painting on it of the two-color clam broth in blue. They did a few of the reverse because these were two pieces. Now the difference here is there's no wafer. These were molded in two pieces, and Imperial actually glued them together with a special epoxy. Same as Fostoria did some of their cake plates and like that later on in the American pattern with an epoxy. The two pieces were glued together.
What happens when they heat up? Don't take them apart?
No, no. Here's an all blue one. Now, even though it's all the same color, it's actually still two pieces. This is kind of rare to find in this color. And let's see what else is over here. Imperial did a number of colors that are in the golds, that if you want to hold the light up, that have a lot of uranium in them. Different golds and Vaseline that have uranium in it. So the 70s was very popular for dolphins. Then and we're going to back up a little bit to the 60s. Here's one that looks good. It's a great color, beautiful color. It's roughly made. So you think, wow, maybe this is, Boston sandwich. And it's held together with a wafer. And it's a beautiful sapphire blue, which they made. On the bottom, it says GHC, which was an American company in the 60s that had acquired an original Boston sandwich mold. And they actually sent the mold to Taiwan. And the dolphins were made in Taiwan. And they made them in clear, and they made them in this blue. Not valuable at all, but they're very pretty. I think they're nice. The clear are a little rougher, but the blue is pretty.
Are they missing their eyes?
I don't know. This is a Westmoreland dolphin. So just to talk about Westmoreland for a second, this was, originally made in 1920s. It's a 1049 dolphin. They continued making these in every color you can imagine for years and years. This one, like I said, is in there. I don't remember the blue, but it's an opaque blue. They closed in the mid 80s, and the mold, the 1049 molds, went to Viking. Viking started making. Here's an amethyst. No, this is a black one. And I have an amethyst around here somewhere in the front. No, I can't see because of the light. There it is. An amethyst one the Viking made. A black one that Viking made they satinized the base of it. These were only sold in the gift shop at the store. You find all black ones that Viking made. Now, there is a difference, and let me show you how you can tell a Westmoreland one. A Westmoreland one will have a hole here in the dolphin. Vikings, when they made them, they were solid. No hole in the bottom. Now, Viking owned this mold until they closed in the 90s, and then Mosser bought the mold. And Mosser's the same way, solid bottom. Here's a red satin that Mosser made. Now, Mosser still owns this mold, and I've talked to them for years. They refuse to make them. I have begged them and pleaded. I wanted a full run. I wanted a color that nobody had made, and they just refuse to make them. They keep saying they're too busy, so they don't want to make them. Here's an iridized Mosser. You see the bottom. And here's a really neat one that won't work in here, but this is diachromatic. So it looks pinkish, purple, and then if you put it into fluorescent lights, it's blue. And again, with the solid bottom.
What did GHC stand for?
I knew something. Okay, the question is, what did GHC stand for? And, earlier today, I said it, and right now, I can't remember.
H is home.
Something Housewares Company, General Housewares Company, I'm pretty sure. Matter of fact, I did it, General Housewares. So that's what GHC stands for. All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about Dolphin Candlesticks. We're going to talk about some hurricanes, and then we'll be finishing. I'm going to try not to destroy these. Yeah. All right, here's 3 hurricanes in dolphins. This one, 1940s, Indiana glass. The only dolphin Indiana made. You will find these bases all the time, but you very rarely see the shades. This is an actual shade that belongs on. You know, not valuable, but beautiful and very useful. This one here is Cambridge. As you notice, it's a square bottom, came out in the 30s, made it to the very end. This is a trumpet hurricane shade in Wildflower. And they also made a traditional hurricane shade. And you'll find it Rose Point, Wildflower, Candlelight. You'll find them in all the different, popular etches with the Bobesh and the prisms, different styles of prisms. This one here is French. It's called PV, Portière Versailles, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not good at that. Valerie Slaw. I'm not good at pronouncing it. They made this one in both blue, opaque, and the citron, which the citron, again, is a uranium glass. As you see it glow. These have been reproduced, not the actual hurricanes. If you ever find the shades, that they're original. But if you notice, well, let me move this. This is a style of dolphin candlestick that they made that was just made to be a dolphin candlestick, not a hurricane.
Can't see it, it has to come down.
Oop, sorry. I don't know if you can see the, let me move. Hold on, let me move this. And we'll put it right next to each other. There you go. So you see, this one has a different kind of cup that actually holds the chimney. This one is totally different. They made these in blue also, blue opaque. They made them in a opaline, just like a clam broth. Any other color you see, pink, carnival, green, are Taiwanese reproductions.
Usually slumped.
And yeah, and usually kind of slumped. This is just kind of a fun piece I found. It is a pottery version of theirs. I don't know what time period. Looking at the pottery, probably in the 40s or 50s. So those are the French ones. Not baccarat, but very nicely done. And then the indigo glass. Glass. Yeah. And then this is the last one I'll show you tonight. Very unusual style. This was made in the 2000s, and it's Russian. It has its tags on it. I have a pair of them, and it's a Russian company that made them that has gone out of business, just like all of our glass companies. But beautiful lead crystal, and neat design. A little bit different design. So Dolphin candlesticks, you have such an array. You can buy them for, a milk glass pair by, hold on 1 second. Can you grab a milk glass pair down there?
Do what now?
A Westmoreland milk glass pair.
Oh.
I do want to show you one more Westmoreland milk glass. These are the most absolute common dolphins out there. Get the one with the gold. Oh, good. Westmoreland made these from the 30s till they closed, so approximately 50 years. You will find millions of these out there. The milk glass ones, you can easily buy a pair of them for $10 to $15. Some of them have a little decoration on them, but they're a great pair to have, and they look good. They're beautifully made, American company. So you can have, you can collect these, and you can collect all the different colors, and they're very, very
Whoops.
Move that. Sorry about that. And
Is there a way?
shut your phone off.
That is awesome.
Sorry about the reverb. The other day.
I have. Is there a way to date the dolphins?
There's a question. Is there a way to date the Dolphins? I don't know what's going on.
Zach, apparently you've got 2 microphones going.
From who?
You have 2 microphones going.
How about now?
Yeah, that. Whoops.
Hold on. We're trying to see what the problem is. Sorry, everybody.
Dan's iPhone is on.
How is it now?
Okay, I think we've got it taken care of.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what. His iPhone's been on the entire night. So I don't know why all of a sudden it started doing that. But so I've got a question on the floor. So hold on 1 second. I want to answer that. Like I said, there are so many different dolphins you can collect in any price range. So the question on the floor was, how do you date them? You know, it's by style, by color. You know, reading a lot of books, knowing the different ways that they were made, knowing what companies were making them at the time, and eventually, I'm trying to write a book on 20th century tall Dolphin Candlesticks. So that would be a wonderful way of figuring out dates on. Any other questions? Any
Do
questions?
you know how many candlesticks you have?
No.
Wow, that's an incredible collection you got there.
Thank you very much. This is just a actually, this is a fraction of it. I didn't, there's tons of colors that I didn't pull out and stuff like that. I just wanted to get the basics.
Would you know how many candlesticks you have?
Yes, I have about 380. And
I know you
different ones, I have about 200 different.
You don't keep them all around the fireplace there.
No, but actually I have quite a few in the living room. I have quite a few in the dining room. Unfortunately, nothing against Imperial, but most of my Imperials are packed in the basement. I have Cambridge out and I have Westmoreland out.
Do you sell them to somebody else?
If I get duplicates, do I sell them was a question. If I get duplicates, yes.
What do you feel like your best deal? Your most value for the least money or something like that, you know?
Well, you know, let's go back to this one. The one I got 2 weeks ago. They thought it was a Westmoreland because of the base. They advertised it on eBay. It's a Boston sandwich in almost proof condition. And it was $29, including shipping on eBay.
Wow, okay.
So, and it's a very rare candlestick. But like I said, they thought it was a Westmoreland, but it's actually an original. So that's one of my better deals.
Fantastic. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Well, I guess we'll wrap this up. I really appreciate it, Zach. Frankly, I didn't realize there were that many dolphins, but
oh yeah.
Of course, everybody says when we start taking a look at all the different sizes of feet and the shape of the mold and bowls and stretch glass, they go, well, I just thought that blue bowl was just another blue bowl. And now
this is very comprehensive for 20th century dolphins. the early Dolphins I showed was just a fraction of what there really is out there. But they, you know, in the sapphire and the amethyst, you know, they go for, you know, a good pair of sapphires will go for $2,000 or $3,000 in Boston and Sandwich. So, you know, that's why I always limited my area to 20th century.
I understand that reasoning. Well, thanks very much. Cal, did you want to make any closing remarks?